All right, welcome everyone. We are back again with the Financial MD show with yours truly, John Salitro and Dr. Trevor Smith. How's it going, Trevor?
Great. Having a good start to the week here.
Yes, it is Monday here in Financial MD land, and somehow I feel slightly more dynamic with these big headphones on my head. Like,
It's good.
or it could go completely the other way where I'm like NPR announcer. We're gonna
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway, we've got a great topic for you. I love talking about this particular topic because we do get a lot of questions on it, and it's more of a philosophical or more of a how do you predict the near future is going to go when we get asked the question of should we rent or buy during residency. We'll talk about that first, and then we'll talk a little bit about buying or renting when you get your first job, because that's a different concept as well. But there are a lot of factors to consider when you're buying versus renting. Okay, so you're getting out of medical school, you've been matched, you're headed to your or you know where you're going to be, and you start looking ahead maybe a few months before of where you're going to live, right? Trevor, you came from U of M med school, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I grew up in West Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Went to undergrad there at Hope College and then went to University of Michigan Medical School. Yep, that's
And
right.
you then had to find a place in Royal Oak area because residency was at Beaumont.
That's right. Yeah, Beaumont, now called Beaumont Health
Okay,
in
I call it
Royal
Club
Oak.
Beaumont, but
Yeah, some people do call it Club Beau. Definitely not internally, but yeah. Uh, it's not very clubbish, I can tell you that
no,
for sure.
no,
It's
right.
it's it's definitely residency. But yeah, so then I had to find a spot in Royal Oak. So yeah, my first thought is just like I don't know where I was going for residency to to think about getting a house in medical school was like definitely not on
No,
my agenda. Nor did I need one. Didn't have family, didn't have kids. Everybody's got a different circumstance, but I didn't even have like a motivating factor to even lean that direction.
mm-hmm.
Plus, I was, 23 starting medical school, so, which sounds young now.
You
Yeah,
mean
so
out of medical school at 23?
no, starting medical school in terms of
Okay,
like looking at a house potentially. There was people in my class that bought a house. They
that's
had
interesting.
worked for a few years, not even that much older, like late 20s. They had a kid or a kid on the way, and
Working spouse?
they either had either a working spouse or some of them a non-working spouse who just wanted a home.
And their
Some people
student
just
loan
kind of,
payments went to mortgage payments?
yeah, I would think that would be it. I'm honestly not sure now that I say that. Maybe they were working and it was just enough to pay that portion.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, then when I went to residency, I kind of thought about it. I Googled around a little bit, and white coat investor steered me clear of buying anything big. And then I knew I was going to try to pay off my loans directly, so my finances were tight because like the first few months before I refied, I was paying like full payments on my loans, or one of my loans, the government
Yep.
one. So I knew I was, getting a house was not in the cards for me. I didn't have the cash flow. I didn't have a down payment. More to that story later. I did end up getting a house for a year, but
Oh, you did. Okay, excellent.
yeah, I don't think I ever told you, or we haven't talked about that at any point. But
Mm-mm.
yeah, but I'll kick it back to you.
Okay. So here's the situation. You're getting out of medical school, you're going into residency, you're searching around for where to live. And most people come into it with the mentality of, in general, it is better to buy than rent from not throwing away your money. And so I get this question, and I got this question when I was speaking to, I remember one specifically I was talking to, and this was a year, maybe two ago, talking to MSU's radiology residency program. And I try to hang around and answer some questions at the end. But first year, PGY1 comes up to me and says, I'm thinking I should probably buy a house. What do you think? And I said, no, don't do that. And they kind of looked at me a little shocked, like, why? It's always better to buy versus rent, right? Like, you're owning something and building equity and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, normally, sure. Although there's other schools of thought on that as well. Like, just depends what's important to you. Is it important to you to be more mobile? Is it important to you to not have to take care of a house? All that kind of stuff, which, okay, so throwing away money could be valuable, that kind of thing. But when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to residency, the general school of thought that I approach it in is a longer residency makes it make a little more sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, in a pretty high likelihood, you're not going to stick around that town. Probably 80% chance. Most people
Mm-hmm.
are
Yeah.
traveling a distance from their home. So maybe they're one of the few that really like it and they get offered a job as an attending to, the hospital that they actually graduated from, but not
Right.
likely. And specifically in today's market, if you buy a house, I would say prices are higher than they should be on houses. So this may be different in your part of the country, but in Michigan, prices have been going up and up and up since about 2012, have surpassed beyond where they were at the time of what we call the housing bubble or the mortgage crisis or whatever you want to call it, when prices kind of crashed back down again. And I was lucky enough to pick up a foreclosure at the time and just sold it this summer. So we made out pretty well. But in general, buying a house right now or in the last couple of years, or probably in the next year or two, means you're going to be paying a high price for it, especially when you look around and see that people are getting into bidding wars for a house. That's like a sure sign that you're overpaying for this house, I would think. And maybe you don't care, but when it comes to something that I'm going to buy this and then 80 to 90% chance I'm going to sell it in the next 3 to 5 years, should you be buying an asset that's overpriced is all I'm saying. And so,
Mm-hmm.
no, when I say personally, I say don't buy a house during residency, rent. And it's simply for that reason. And we saw this back in before my time when some of the partners that I grew up with and was trained with, when they were doing these lectures and working with residents and helping them transition into practice in like 06, 07, 08, what they saw was residents buying houses because at the time, real estate's the best investment in the world, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
air quotes if you're watching the video.
Right. It
Um,
always goes up. It always goes up.
you're right.
That's what they were saying, and that's why, yeah, exactly.
Which
Safe bet,
is
etc.
that true over time? Sure, you would say that about the S&P 500 too, but we're not talking about long term. I had an ER resident that got out of residency in 2009, had bought a house, and she couldn't sell it because she owed more than it was worth. She was what they call underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And she moved out of the state to get a job in Kentucky, still having this house. So for 2, 3, 4 years, she carried 2 houses. And you can say, well, that's great. You can just rent it. Yeah, sure, that's an option. Do you want to? And it's not
That's
like
a
a sure thing.
that's a stress. That's
Oh,
just
it
a
is.
stress when you're having life changes. Like even if you take a new job that you're really excited about and you have to move and start fresh, it's stressful. You know, it's very stressful. I think especially in medicine, there's so many uncertainties, and you have a lot of there's a pressure on you. You put pressure on yourself. You know, people are watching you. Did we just hired this guy? We just paid him a bunch of money to come over here. Is he going to do a good job? You
Yeah.
know, you want the staff to like you. You want to not be busy throughout the day making phone calls and arranging stuff. It's just like adding complexity to your life or adding complexity to your future life. If it can be avoided for like the first 5 to 10 years after graduating medical school, it's priceless because
Yeah.
they're already chaos, and you only have control about so many factors that are going to stress you out. But making major purchases, you have control over that.
Yep.
And unless you have a lot of good reasons, you're going to be glad, especially if you really look into the prices and how much you quote unquote save by buying a house and not quote again wasting your money on rent. When you compare the two, a lot of over a lot of time periods and in a lot of scenarios, you come out ahead on the rent. So, and people argue about this like forever,
Hmm.
but
Yeah, well, and that's
it's
the other
true.
fact that,
It adds complexity.
I mean, how long does it even take before you're really gonna get back to breaking even on the house, as far as how much of those first few years are just interest? You know what I mean? And let
Yeah,
alone closing costs. So even if you
right.
sold the house for exactly what you bought it, you wouldn't be able to get back out of it what you put in for 4 or 5 years, I would think. So these residents buying houses in their first year, their house has to go up in value just to get their money back out and break even when they get out of residency, because
Hmm.
of closing costs and interest and all that kind of stuff, especially if they're doing the zero money down physician loan, which in residency, that's pretty much most people, that's all you can do.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it kind of allows residents to get a house when maybe they shouldn't, but there's a lot of factors to that. It's the timing of when you're
Yeah.
buying and selling, it's the interest, it's the closing costs, and just all that stuff. I think a lot of you growing up, again, like Trevor's saying, have this message that you need to buy and not rent. But renting is like paying insurance. There's a cost to it. What are you paying for? Well, you're paying for the freedom to be able to live your life the way you want and not worry about bad things
Hmm.
happening and at least, wiping you out financially. That's insurance. Same thing with rent. You're paying for the insurance that if I got to go somewhere quick, I can. And I don't have to worry about selling a house or being a landlord, or if I need to
Hmm.
be flexible. And with you guys as residents, you're going to have to be flexible.
I'm probably extreme on the rental side of things. Like I read Ramit Sethi's book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and he's
Yeah.
got a whole blog system and stuff. He's great. That just like put the nail in the coffin for me wanting a house in the next like 3 to 5 years. I don't want one. I have such a long list of reasons why I love renting.
Yeah.
So before it was like, oh, renting kind of stinks, but like buying a house, there's so many barriers. It's really hard. And like I said, I had one for a year. Maybe I'll tell that story in a minute. But like I kind of know like it is challenging and there's so many hidden costs and they're not small
Hmm.
that, I was like, oh, it's kind of it's a lot of responsibility. I'm a millennial and I do like the freedom and I
You're
don't
a
own something
vagabond.
that.
Yeah. You're,
Yeah, and I'm not. I'm like so not a vagabond. I've been in
no.
like Michigan my entire life. But but yeah, it's nice to not feel like stuck to things that are big and expensive when I've already got student loans. Anyways, but renting, it's just so good. I don't understand how there must be just so much money being made by the housing industry to convince everybody that owning a home is a no-brainer. And then also just the housing market, I think you almost have to get into like the bigger economic picture of the United States and inflation and all this stuff. But like the numbers have just gone up. So like it just seems like a safe thing. It's a false sense of safety. It's a false sense of it's an investment when to me buying a house is actually mostly it's an expense. If you look at it a little bit more objectively for how much you're going to pay, like you said, closing costs, the interest is actually kind of insane unless you're doing a 15 year.
Hmm.
When we're talking to residents here, residents aren't doing a 15 year.
No.
They're trying to get their monthly payment as low as possible. They're trying to say, I can get more for the same price as renting. Usually, I think is what it comes down to. It's not like I'm going to invest my money and I'm going to have a little nest egg in 3 to 5 years. It's like, oh, well, I was going to pay $1,100 for a rental place and it's like not that nice and I want to have my own place. So I'm
Yeah.
going to find a place on Zillow for 900. It's going to end up costing you 1200, with all the closing costs, with the insurance you're going to have to buy and you're going to want. And then what if something breaks? Like, yeah. So it really adds up fast. You start out, and the way they get you to buy something, just in general, car purchasing process is the same way. They make it seem really easy. It's going to happen really fast. It's going to be smooth. It's just as good or better than the option renting
Yep.
that you thought you were going to do. So they just kind of like sleepwalk you into buying a house, I think.
Hmm.
Um, they make it seem easy. They do the mortgage calculator for you on Zillow. I can find a good deal. You talk yourself into thinking you
Interest
found
rates
a
are low.
deal.
There's no better time.
Yeah. I mean, how many people have you heard go, "Oh, best thing ever. I bought a house. I paid too much." Like, everyone thinks they got a deal. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's what I don't understand. Like when I talked about the whole bidding wars thing, like
Mhm.
you put an offer on a
Mhm.
house and then the realtor comes back and says they got another offer. What's your highest and best? That's the bidding war. How
Mhm.
can you feel good about that? Right. Like
Mhm.
I, I how do you not have some buyer's remorse? You must be so emotionally attached to that house that
Mhm.
you're like, I don't care. Just write them a check, honey, whatever they want. And
Yep, that's
and
right.
then
The
you
Yep.
get the house and then you go through this process and you're sitting in this house. Wouldn't you sit there the first night being like, yeah, I paid too much for this thing?
I don't think people do have that.
No, they don't.
Honestly, I
They
think
can't. They wouldn't be able to live with
they
themselves.
they're so happy. You know what people don't do is after the fact sit down and go, "How much did I spend to make this happen?
No, they don't
What
because they don't want to know.
and am I glad?" They do not want to do that. I wouldn't do that either. Like, nobody in the right mind would sit down and go, "Okay, there were some unexpected costs. Let me put that in a spreadsheet and just make myself depressed."
Yeah.
No one's
It's
gonna do
like,
that. But that is what's gonna happen
yeah.
if you
And
don't
as
do it ahead
human
of time.
beings, we can convince ourselves of anything.
Yeah,
And
totally.
when they go through that process, they're just slowly every day convincing themselves, yeah, no, this is a good
Mhm.
deal. Yep. I'm glad I did this. This is great. This makes sense.
Yep,
And
yep.
I totally agree on like people say their house is an investment, but it's
Mhm,
not. Unless you're going to turn that somehow into
mhm.
cash and recognize that gain, it's not an investment. It's an asset,
Yeah.
I guess.
It's
But at the end of the
it's an
day,
asset with a decent amount of risk. It's an asset with a decent amount of risk, like buying a stock.
yeah. And people talk about, if they have enough
Mhm,
savings for retirement and blah, blah. And they're like, oh, well, then I've got my house too. I've got equity in that. I'm like, that equity
mhm.
doesn't mean squat unless you're actually going to sell it. It's just paper gains, right?
That's right.
And so you're going to sell that house to help fund your retirement? If yes, then okay, we can include this in the picture and in the plan. But if not,
Right.
then it can sit over here on the side while we look and
Yeah,
see what other investments you don't have because you decided to pay down all
yeah,
your student loans first. But
yeah. Oh, wait, so let me tell you about how, like, I got this house.
yes, please.
Um, so I'm in residency, and this is such I'm, like, already reflecting on the silly parts of this story.
Okay.
So I, let's see, I was a second or third year resident living in a teeny tiny little apartment. It was like, I want to say it started at like 630 per month, and it was walkable to the hospital. And I
Mhm.
had a very strict but responsible landlord, and it was great. It's one of those kitchens where like the kitchen counter was this wide,
Yeah.
next to the sink.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't even have a place to like dry your dishes pretty much, and there was no
Yeah.
dishwasher. But I knew what I was getting, and I was motivated to pay off my loans and yada yada. And I wanted to, like, live responsibly. And at the time too, I was planning on doing like long-term international medical work.
Okay.
So I was like, I got to keep it tight so like I can get out there and get going like as soon as possible and
Because
have
that
the
was
least
kind of one
amount
of
of
the
money.
stipulations on your loan forgiveness, sort of, right?
Yeah, yep, that's right. Yeah, so uh anyways, I had the small apartment and I liked it. Like, I definitely am somebody who can, I think, go with the flow. Don't need to have like everything like right away. I can bide my time. Delayed gratification. So, anyways, it was fine for a couple years, and then I started dating this girl with a dog, and then I couldn't have a dog in my apartment. So you're like,
Period. Not even visiting.
not even visiting because, like I said, my
Okay.
landlord was really strict.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though like it's not a nice place, you'd think he'd be like fine with it. He had a dog, whatever. So, like, it just kinda, like, put this bug in my ear, like, maybe I'll look at a house, and I was looking at maybe a fellowship and staying in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So I kinda, like, started doing, like, justify, this part of my feelings, justify this part of my feelings, and it'd be kinda convenient for this, and I do wanna have a house, and I'm trying to get out of debt, so why don't I pick up an asset that's gonna be worth more in a couple of years? And basically, I just started looking at houses, and then I would find one. I was like, "Ooh, I really like this house." Completely emotional interest. And then I would look at it, and it wasn't what I wanted. And I was like, "Okay, thank God I didn't like that house because I don't have the money." Eventually, I got a house. My parents helped me with the down payment because I didn't want to do a physician loan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was understood that I would basically borrow that, pay it back. And
Yeah.
anybody listening who doesn't, have that type of situation is like, gosh, this guy, I feel so bad for his loans with his parents helping him with his house. But I'm just being real. This is how I ended up getting a house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 215, I think I paid.
Okay.
And it was just a small ranch home. I
Mm-hmm.
liked it. It was great. Less than 30 days in, and it got a good inspection, yada yada. Less than 30 days in, the hot water heater went out. I replaced it
Yay.
myself with a
Oh.
handyman. Went to the store, carried this like 200-pound full of full of the hard water buildup stuff inside. It was one of the heaviest things I've ever lifted. I
Oh
think
my
I was
gosh.
sure I was gonna hurt
Heavy
myself.
and awkward.
We
Yeah.
Yeah, so we carried it up the stairs, and he disposed of it. And I bottom dollar paid him like hourly for the afternoon, and bought the thing at Home Depot and used his truck and drove it over. Bottom dollar, it cost me, I think, $900 to replace it within 30 days. And I didn't do
Oh.
like the 1 year insurance thing,
Yeah.
which is like, to me, I will always do that in the future.
Yeah.
So I had that repair. Then, like a month later, I had a backup in the basement. It
Oh.
had like snowed, melted, and somebody came in, snaked it. They took some roots out, and they were like, "Hey, there's cracks in the." They like used a clay pipe because it's an old area of Detroit,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
and it was cracked. He's like, "You're gonna have to replace that from the house to the street." Well, I
You
got a
know what?
quote.
They
It's
get a
12.
ton of those down there. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, tons, because those are old. $12,000 is what they were saying it was going to cost. Guess how much money I had in the bank? Like twelve
Not
hundred
that.
dollars, probably
Yep.
$1,500. Pretty much
10.
living month to month now that I bought a house and I refinanced my
Yeah.
loans. So I'm like not even paying my loans down anymore. Like goals out the window. So eventually then I'm applying for fellowship, and then I didn't match in Detroit. So now I have to sell my house.
Oh.
I was pretty much sure I was going to match in Detroit, and it worked out. Everything works out fine. Like, love my mentors and everything. Like, it's fine, but it was unexpected, and I was like, okay, like that's great. I'm still going to go somewhere good, but I'm going to have to sell this house. So I sold the house 10 months actually after I bought it,
Oh my
and I
gosh.
did for sale by owner. I got out of it by the skin of my teeth. I actually made a small profit because selling by owner is like pretty doable.
Yeah.
But I got lucky, like super, super lucky.
Yeah.
And I was stressed probably for 6 of those 10 months. I was stressed about when I sell this, they're going to do an inspection. They're going to see that pipe needs to be replaced, and I'm going to
Yeah.
have to pay it. And it was going to be at least $12,000, depending on how fast they could do it and permits
Yeah.
and so forth, because they have to shut down the street. And that's just one of a million things that can expensive wrong with your home that you have to replace. And so I wasn't prepared to be in a house. I still enjoyed it, and there's lots of great memories and yada yada.
Did the
But
dog get to did the dog get to
the
enjoy the
dog got
house?
to hang out in the house. It was very happy in the house. It was great. It was fun. So
Mm-hmm.
it was nice to have a home. It is better in terms of just it's a different sort of satisfaction, I think, to own a home. Like, I get it. It's nice.
Yeah.
But there's the stress in residency is significant. The stress of owning a home and the lack of predictability it's substantial. And there's way worse stories than that one.
Oh yeah.
But the reason I was able to not lose a bunch of money was because I fully disclosed that whole thing when I was selling it by owner. And because I did, he had a separate plumber, different company, come out and give a second opinion.
Okay.
And they said, this is normal. Cracks in the pipe is fine.
Yep.
And this will last 20 more years as long as you just snake it once a year. That'll cost you $50 once a year.
Oh,
So I got so lucky.
thank the
That one
Lord.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So otherwise I would have just added another 10 grand
Mm-hmm.
to my already large mountain of debt. Um, and that was a house I had inspected thoroughly. My brother's a real estate agent. He's like, everything's checking out, everything looks good. My real estate agents, like, my son just bought a house in the same neighborhood a couple months ago. Like, this is, a good price. You're getting a deal. Again, see, thought I was getting a deal. So,
Says the guy who's
anyways,
going to get a commission.
I know
Yeah.
that's exactly a long story, but
No, that's
that made
exactly
me.
prime scenario. Yeah.
It happens in, like, it just, maybe I had to go through that, but like, I love renting now. Like,
Sure.
I am
Yeah.
obsessed with renting,
Understandable.
and I don't have a fancy apartment or anything right now, and it's just great. It's peace of mind. It's a controlled fixed amount of money per month, so I can manage my budget better while I'm aggressively paying down my loans.
Mhm.
You don't always get a great landlord, but like, I've repeatedly had a really nice landlord that fixes things quickly. My hot water when I take a shower is terrible. Like,
Okay.
like, it'll go hot and then cold, but it's like, eh,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have everything, even in the house that you own.
Yeah.
And, the peace of mind and the control of being able to leave or move, um, it's amazing. It's so nice. Renter's insurance is way cheaper. Everything is less
Heck yeah, it
expensive.
is.
I love it.
Yeah, that's those are some fantastic points, and a lot of them in favor of renting, from lowest cost on insurance and no chance of, you having to deal with, like, water issues in the house are the worst because
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
just so expensive to fix if they can be fixed. And that's the one thing I've
Yeah.
learned from
Oh, yeah.
different houses is always look at the basement, look for any signs of water,
Mhm.
because they may say
Mhm.
whatever they may say. And at the end of the day, they're not liable. There's
Yeah.
no return policy on a house. So you're in it.
Yeah.
And then the next month you got water in your basement, and it's like,
And you're
what
dealing with
do
it
you
again.
do? I've dealt with that, and it's
Me too.
so stressful. And then what happens
Yep.
is every time it rains after that, you're like lying awake in
Stress.
bed, just like, I'm going to go check the basement. You're
Yeah.
like, I've done that so
I
many
have a
times.
list of things that I want in my next house, and one of them, no basement. Like,
No
it's gonna
basement
be
at
hard
all.
to find. Well, they have them. My parents actually don't have a basement because the last house they owned flooded every single year, and they
Yeah.
got sick of, like, replacing the carpet and the drywall, and
Just no
they
basement.
did all the things all the people recommended, and they had a sump pump, and they had a backup battery, and it just, like, always flooded.
Yeah.
And they, like, rehabbed a house, and it was close enough on, like, close to some dune area
Hmm.
where, like, nobody in the neighborhood had basements,
Sure.
and they were just like, "We are not putting in a basement. This is great. We love this." How could it flood? And I mean, the roof could leak or a pipe could break, but, like, other than that, it's not gonna flood like clockwork annually.
Yeah.
And, oh my gosh.
Right.
That's yeah. Oh, I hated worrying about when it would rain.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's
I
great.
was so tempted to just, I even put a deposit down to get a B
Mhm.
dry system, a basement waterproofing. It was like $8,000 they wanted for that. And
Yeah,
I
it's
was
so
like,
expensive.
the first time we got water in the basement, I'm like, fine, do it. Here's a deposit. Like, I want this. And then I had to, like, move around some dirt and stuff around the outside of the house and fix some gutters and stuff. And that pretty much took care of it. So then I was like,
Mhm.
I guess I don't need the B dry system. So I went to get my money back,
Right.
and they're like, yeah, we don't really give the deposits back after
Wow.
45 days. And I'm like, it was like a 25% deposit too, like
Yeah.
2 grand. And I was like, I don't think so. So I started, they gave me half of it back eventually after I threw enough of a fit and wrote a
Yep.
letter. But
Yeah.
yes, so lots of great stories about buying a house.
Yeah.
And, similar concept when it comes to, okay, I'm out of residency. Now I'm an attending. Now I can buy a house, right? I don't, because what are the
Right.
chances, Trevor? Maybe you know this. What are the chances that your first job is going to be your last job? pretty
The
slim.
last job, it's like, I don't, it's probably less than 10%, I would guess, for last job. I think people say that more than half of people leave their first job within 2 years.
That's what I've heard too. I've
Yeah,
heard
at least half.
80% within 3 years.
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean,
It's
I've got text message chains going with like lots of different ophthalmologists just in my subspecialty. And that's a
mhm,
subspecialty where you do want to find something and stick
sure
because you build patient
to get
base and it
equity. Yeah.
really, really benefits. And then when you're a partner, then you get profit sharing. It's particularly beneficial in ophthalmology and
Mhm.
particularly detrimental, really, to move around
Mhm.
for the same reasons. But I'm talking to multiple people. We're all like early, and I've moved, and they're all either moving or looking and asking, like, "Hey, what did you look for in this next position?" And yada yada. Like, I don't have this, I don't have that. I'm looking for something new, and they're all renting. Fortunately, I mean, off the top of my head, yeah, I think they're all renting. Um,
Mhm.
so it's great. I mean, it's just one major factor that's not going to just kind of push you and hold
Yep.
you down when you know you don't like what you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can it's a lot of the same concepts. Again, if you
Yeah.
that first month or two when you're in that new job and you buy a house and you got a physician loan with zero down, again, like you're almost like going backwards a little bit just
Hmm.
to you got to bring money to the table to get out of that house because you got
Yep.
no equity. Um,
Right.
and there's closing costs and all that stuff. So Um, yeah, I don't think we need to go too deeply onto that concept.
Yep.
Pretty much same thing until you really feel like you're settled, until you feel like you're getting a good value. I don't know about
Right.
good deal, but good value for what you're getting and what you're paying, and uh, just all those other factors. Not saying never ever buy a house. I own a house right now. That's obviously it makes sense for
Right.
us. Part of it is I've got 4 kids. It's hard to find a place to rent that can fit this many people, but,
Hmm.
um, it's,
Yeah. And kids, it's nice for kids to have stability. I think that's a little that is nice.
definitely a
You
house and a
don't.
yard and a neighborhood and all that stuff for sure. That's what
Yeah.
we were paying for.
And just not to move every other year. If you're renting, like, yeah, they like a family probably, but they could sell the house if the market's hot in the next 1 to 2 years, and then you're moving every couple of years. It
Mhm.
it does happen to people. I know people have done that as a family, but you just have to pick up and move. They're selling the house.
Yeah, we had
So
really good timing with like I said, we bought our house in 2012 as a foreclosure. It was a
yeah, right.
four-bedroom, good size house, and then we just bought it this or sold it this year and basically doubled our money. So,
Hmm.
but that was probably cross my fingers, a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I was
Right.
like, I knew back then, I was like, okay, there's a bunch of foreclosures around. I better, I'm going to find a sweet deal on a house. And then
Yeah.
we always knew as a family that this could be our forever house or we could sell it when it makes sense. And one day we just
Hmm.
looked at each other and we're like, what do you think about selling this house? Okay, let's look into it. And here we are.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah. I have like a closing thought, or like
yeah.
getting close to a closing thought too, which is just, I'm trying to think of like what my friends have been saying to me as I've been talking about how much I like renting. Definitely the number one is like, well, don't you feel like you're wasting money? We've kind of been over that.
Sure.
And it's never a waste. Like, it's a roof over my head and all these like great things that I get out of it,
Yeah.
just like a house. It's definitely not a waste of money. I'm paying good money for something, and not
Hmm.
too much.
Hmm.
But I think it's always about like, a lot of these questions are so objective focused. It's like, I want a house. I don't know why I want a house, but I have a desire to have a house. And I think we like when we want something. So like people will oftentimes say, they're just trying to figure out like how to get the house because they want the house, even if they don't know why.
Yep.
But they're not thinking bigger picture, like, how do I build wealth? Like, what do I want in life? How do I want to be successful? And you don't need a house to build wealth. And especially early in our careers as a physician, you're so far in the hole that buying a house often inhibits your ability to build wealth. And so this just like, do I buy a new car? Do I lease a car? Like, I think I read a lot about the specific issues, which is helpful in residency. I was like,
Hmm.
I want to get a better car. I want a reliable car. It's like all these narratives that companies and whatever basically us, we tell ourselves these things because we want new things. We want nice things. But like the question really is like, how do I want to build wealth? And then how do I make a plan? And it's so easy to get distracted with these individual decisions. But it's really like you got to come back to the big picture. What am I trying to accomplish? What am I trying to do?
Yep.
What am I trying to build? Who do I want to be? Like these are such these are way more important questions that become your motivation, that become your foundation for making a smart decision about buying a house. And we almost got to this like backwards a little bit, but just it is what's motivated me to rent. I say like, oh, there's all these good ideas, but really the reason I've done it and I've stuck with it is because I want freedom. I want financial freedom. I don't want to be in debt. I'd love to own a house someday, but I don't want to do it in a way where I feel trapped or where it's limiting me, funding.
Yeah.
If I want my kids to go to a private high school or something, like I'd like to be able to do that. I don't think I want to do that. I went to public school, but like it's just a good example of like I just yeah, I think we focus on the specific issues and it's helpful and there's a lot to be learned, nuances, pros and cons, all these opinions, but really like if you don't know what you want or like what you're striving for,
Hmm.
you're just going to forget and then just read like little tiny articles about this and that. And
Sure.
um,
And kind of
anyways,
get the
that was
squirrel
that was the
mentality of
closing
like,
thought.
go after, yeah, whatever you read, oh, shiny object, and kind of go after that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you forget. It's so easy to forget.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think
So
it's a great closing thought that how does this all tie back into financial planning and
hmm
your overall financial picture? Does a house play into that? Maybe. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's definitely something that every decision, we do this roadmap with our uh, new clients where we walk them through first before even talking about money and dollars and goals and time horizons and all that stuff. We talk about their values and we say it's called a values-based financial planning approach, where we say, okay, but this concept of money, what's important to you about money? And we start to get at the motivations of people, and it does bring security and it brings comfort, and I take care of my
hmm
family, and I do all these kind of things that are deep rooted philosophical values that they were raised with, or cultural things. And then we get to the next step of, okay, and how does your financial plan help you feel these things or accomplish these things, and
hmm
basically make you feel like, how does money give you the life that you want now and 50 years from now, and leave the legacy you want for your family and all those things? And maybe a house plays into that, but
hmm
maybe we have to have the conversation that, okay, for you to do this, I think the most optimal way is for you to rent right now, and
hmm
that's okay. And it may go against the conventional thinking, but running everything, and why when we have our reviews with our clients, we pull out the roadmap every time so we can say, just to kind of check back to that standard and that benchmark of, is every
hmm
decision that we're making and everything that we're recommending and the plans we're putting together, is it still in line with what you said is important to you? And a house buying decision, where you live, buying or renting, is no different. How does it all play into that? So yeah, that's, I think, a
That's
fantastic
great.
point that we need to remember. Overarching, what are we saying here at Financial MD? Does this decision get you closer to or further from your best life?
How often do you go over that with your clients? Is that an annual check-in?
At least every 6
Or
months.
that sounds about right. Like I tend to get off track little bits, maybe quarterly,
Yep.
but for the most part, yeah, like a 6 month check-in would probably be
Yeah. I can fix
spot
most
on.
things within 6 months with people. So in 6 months,
That's cool.
it's funny. I've been working with enough attending physicians now that there's 6 months between, they can build up enough cash that, depending who they are, I'll meet them every 6 months and be like, oh, I've got another 50 grand sitting in my checking account. Okay, let's do something with that. Let's invest that. Let's do it, and not just let it sit in your checking account. Or I've got 100 grand, or whatever the case. So
hmm
yeah, that works for now. And I don't always remember to bring out the roadmap, but um, it's definitely something I try to to make a regular habit.
Nice.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, I
Well,
think
hey,
that's
thanks.
enough to say on that topic. Trevor, as always, thanks for sharing
Yeah.
your insight and your
Hopefully people can
experience.
learn from my
Right.
mistakes, and
Right.
it's definitely humbling to just like tell that story and people can listen to it in perpetuity, but it's true. And like there's everybody has complex situations, and somebody in whatever way you feel like your situation sucks, somebody in that exact same way has probably had it worse than you.
Yeah.
There's always a way out, there's always a plan, and it's honestly, once you sit down and look it square in the face, it's typically not as bad as you thought it would be, and more doable than you expect. So
Yep.
there's a lot of good people out there and great financial advisors like John. So if you don't have one, he's a good one. I don't give you enough big thumbs up on here, but it's true. You're a good dude, and you're principled and family man and all that stuff. So keep up the good work. People are lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you, Trevor. I just need more like me, I guess. I'm awesome. Well, it's good. It's good to be reminded of what we do and why we do it. And so
Absolutely.
hopefully this helps somebody. I'm sure it will. And hopefully it helps lots of people because, like you said, this is going to go in perpetuity. This is going to get posted to the World Wide Web, and it's going to change people's lives. So
That's what we
with
hope.
that, yeah, I'm John. This is Trevor. This is the Financial MD Show. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share it. And I guess this will be the time in our show career where we say, please leave a rating and review. This helps it to reach more people, more residents making smart decisions early on. So leave a review. That would be so fantastic. Check out the YouTube channel where we've got the 2-minute didactic minute videos. You'll meet Piper, the Labradoodle, in the most recent video, and get some good financial tips along the way. Join the Financial MD Facebook community, a group of like-minded physicians sharing ideas, getting ideas, giving ideas. So we're trying to throw as many resources at you as we can to protect yourself from yourself here at Financial MD. So other than that, you know how to contact us, financialmd.com. Schedule your free consultation. We'll see you next time.